Hello there everyone, Leo Chase Smithmaster here with another Scream movie review, this time rounding off the original trilogy. In my other reviews I strongly praised the first two films, but from the fact this is called The Good, the Bad and the Ugly, and as you can probably see the timestamps, I think you can tell I do not think that highly of this movie. After looking at, The Good, the Bad and the Ugly, I will summarize how I would change the movie to make in what my mind would be a better story. There will be spoilers ahead, so if you haven't seen Scream 3 or either of its predecessors, I would recommend you watch them and then come back to this. Now, on with the video. Unfortunately, I will not be going into much depth on the good parts as I don't have much to say about these parts, other than what they are if you get my meaning. I think the voice changer was a good gimmick for the most part, and it created a sense of tension whenever there was a phone call, as we knew what the characters didn't, which is always a good way to build suspense. A big house/mansion is always a great place to end a horror movie, especially one with secret passages, and it doubled as acting as a callback to the first movie, but with a fittingly Hollywood twist added on. Sydney felt like a good continuation of her character and was acted as brilliantly as ever as Neve Campbell, even when the material she was given wasn't the best. While the movie started off fairly slow, it started to ramp up in the middle, with my favourite chase scene in the entire movie, the one in the fake woods burrow, which took full advantage of the Hollywood theming, to again have excellent callbacks to the first movie, while still feeling like its own thing, such as when the door leads to nowhere, and the chase visiting iconic locations, which in the original weren't close together. I think it was a good idea to just have one killer for this one, as it acts as a reverse twist and makes it feel more personal. Speaking of personal, I think the Sydney brother twist was very well set up, and everything around Maureen's Hollywood past was done very well. It was during a conversation between Sydney and Kincaid that I guessed Sydney was going to have a brother, and it was after they talked to John Milton about her mum. And later in the movie, I had realised there'd been even more hints, such as the fantastic Carrie Fisher cameo, and Randy's mention of Return of the Jedi. I was wrong about who the brother was, though, and also who the killer was. Talking about the killer, we move on to the bad. When Roman removed his mask, my first thought was, who? Because he'd been wearing glasses in literally every other scene we'd seen him in. Either he didn't really need them, or they just didn't fit under the mask. But one of the reasons this reveal didn't work for me, and I'll go into other reasons later, is that other than Sydney and Kincaid, none of the characters really felt like characters, at least not when it mattered. At the start, I didn't really like Jennifer, but she started to become more likable in the second act, as she interacted more with Gale. But then she was unceremoniously killed off, with basically no payoff to anything. Angelina was made so suspicious that, unless there had been some big twist that had worked really well, it wouldn't have worked with her being Ghostface, but also what she was doing and stuff was too weird and random to some extent. Her big reveal at the end was actually quite good though, but I felt we didn't have enough time with her for us to really care when she died. And as for the boys in that group, Tyson did literally nothing other than be there, and Tom got blown up in the stupidest part of the movie. There are 6 of you. Why didn't you all just stay outside together and call the cops? That moment also suffered from what I'll call overly dramatic Hollywood screaming, which I feel was much more present in this film than in the others, if it was ever used in the others. Compare all of this to Tatum in Scream 1. She didn't need to have any arc, but was still an excellent and well-constructed character. Her death was set up subtly, and the actual sequence was intense, and used the environment well, which is one of my favourite parts of the Scream franchise. And while Sydney couldn't react much when she saw Tatum's body due to the fact she was in an ongoing chase, we saw a look of horror, and we as the audience knew how much Tatum meant to Sydney because their friendship had been shown throughout the film. Concerning kill sequences, I feel the ones we got in Scream 3 were quite uninspired and didn't utilise the Hollywood theming as well as they could. At least I didn't feel the same way as I did in watching the kill sequences in Scream 1 or 2. Having Ghostface in the rack of Ghostface costumes was really cool, and was a good use of Hollywood theming, even if there was no way he could have known Sarah would go into that room. But that's some suspension of disbelief I could overlook. And as discussed earlier, while it's not a kill sequence, the chase sequence in the set with Sidney was amazing. The pull on the rug with Tyson felt too cartoony in a way, and him landing next to the pool just made me miss the first movie. The secret passages in the house were very good, with Jennifer escaping into one, but then her actual death felt underwhelming, and in hindsight is kind of a worse version of a soundproof room scene in Scream 2. I don't really remember Angelina's death, other than she maybe got her throat slit or something. The secret viewing room was set up, and the confrontation, at least in terms of the action, was done well, but at times it seemed quite vague about how to get into the room, and how close characters like Kincaid, Dewey, and Gale actually were and stuff. Speaking of Gale and Dewey, they just seemed like a worse rehash of Scream 2, with them breaking up off screen again, and they felt like caricatures of themselves for most of the movie, and despite having more screen time than Sidney probably, felt a bit sidelined. I'll get to what I would change about them later. Also, I'm a bit disappointed that they didn't use the voice changer after they found it and just kind of left it there, as them using it against Ghostface to lure him away from someone or something would have been really cool, and would have given Gale and Dewey more to do. Or maybe Jennifer could have used it to save them, and then gotten herself killed by luring Ghostface to wherever she was. Though, about the voice changer, I know I said it was cool, but it may have been a bit overused, in terms of whenever there was a phone call, we basically knew that it was Ghostface because of how much it had been used. Speaking about Ghostface, that brings us into the next section of the video, the ugly. At the start of the bad, I talked about the Roman reveal being, well, bad, and tied it into how most of the side characters, and even some of the main ones, didn't feel like characters. But this will be more directly focused on why I don't think Roman was a good choice, and why he doesn't really feel like a Ghostface. And the best way I can kind of explain this is by talking about Roman and his reveal in relation to the other Ghostfaces. He was a background character for most of the movie, which makes him a bit like Mickey from Scream 2, but he's also like Mrs. Loomis in terms of being a side character who has a twist revealing he's much more closely tied to everything. The reason this worked in Scream 2 was because everything made sense, so to speak, which might just sound like a hand-wave explanation, but the kills all had reasons, with Mickey wanting to kill people with names tying to the original murders, or his grand plan, and Mrs. Loomis having a more personal vendetta. Even in Scream 1, all of the kills have a purpose, which is either revenge, such as with Casey and Steve, or to drive up the narrative that Billy and Stu are pushing. For Roman, he had a motive for killing John Milton and for Sidney as well, which could maybe be stretched to Gale, Dewey, and probably Cotton. But the point is that I cannot really think of any motive for him killing any of the other characters in the movie, as he doesn't seem to be as psychopathic as, say, Stu or Mickey. The killing in order of movie deaths was a cool idea, but felt like a rehash of the second movie killing in name order. But, like in Scream 2, it went absolutely nowhere. But in Scream 2, that made sense, because two different people were behind the plot, and they both had different goals. As I've said multiple times, I think it's good there's just one Ghostface, but I don't think it was executed well, and it felt like the people behind it were juggling everything with Maureen, while also trying to fit in all of the stab-free actors, and just make it feel like a Scream movie with lots of people dying. With Roman helping with Maureen's death, well, I think I'd maybe be fine with him exposing the affair to Billy and letting everything play out, but it sounds like he had a more active role in Maureen's murder, which feels like something Billy would have mentioned when he's explaining everything to Sidney. All of this may sound like I'm saying that Scream 3 is a terrible movie, which it isn't. I just personally think that it was a disappointing continuation to a franchise that had been consistently excellent up to this point. Other than Roman, the other aspect of the movie that I'd class as ugly is the supernatural element, And this kind of ties into how I think the Maureen and Stabfree plots were a bit mismatched and didn't really work side by side, even if there were overlapping elements. I think that Sydney dreaming about her zombie mum was a bit much, though admittedly, at the end with the ambiguous door opening was very nice in terms of Sydney's story and her acceptance. But I think it would have been cool if Roman had said he had set up, or confirmed he'd set up some spooky things with special effects and stage tricks and stuff earlier, such as saying he was the one under the cloth and stuff, because I think that would have helped with the Hollywood side of things. It would have cleared things up in a way, though wouldn't like work as it wouldn't explain her hallucinating her mum, but that could just be cut or changed. But you could still leave the door thing in as an ambiguous ending, even if Roman did say he was behind all of the stuff, because as it stands, that is a very good way to leave Sydney's character. Though I know that isn't actually her end, because I've heard she's also in some of the other sequels, and I'm just really hoping she isn't a main character in them, and is allowed some rest. I realise that I started to edge into rambling territory there, but having covered the good, the bad, and the ugly, to finish this video I want to go over how I would change the movie to make what I think would be a better narrative, which will hopefully also help you understand what I was saying towards the end of the ugly section. In my rewrite, the first half could stay mostly the same, but Sydney doesn't see her ghost mum, and Dewey and Gale start off together. I would also change the house explosion scene so that messages just seem to appear on a mirror or something like written in blood, and everyone runs out, and when Tom goes back in, he just triggers some sort of tripwire that sets off an explosion or something instead of him stupidly pulling out a lighter and stuff like that like he does in the actual movie. Or I'd just remove that section and have the bodyguard and Tom killed separately or something like that. Dewey would seem pretty close to Jennifer as he's been a consultant on the film, though this time Gale knew because they're still together. But this and Dewey refusing to leave after the murders started would cause Gale to decide to break up with him, at least temporarily. Martha would also be a consultant, though not as much as Dewey, because I feel like she deserved more than just a one-time appearance. The rest of the movie would go basically as it does, but Gale would feel more animosity towards Jennifer, though she would eventually come around on her when she apologizes for if she got too close to Dewey. The house scene later on, as in at the mansion, would go mostly the same, but the kills would stop being in movie order and would more turn into don't let anybody leave the mansion, giving a reason for the kill order to stop. Roman and Tyson would be killed somehow, and I'd give Angelina a death like Jennifer got in the actual movie. In Scream 3, I'm guessing that the murders in the house at the end were to stop them being witnesses and stuff, but I think it'd be better if somebody kind of verbally said, why aren't the kills happening in order anymore, and then someone else said, they don't want us to get out of here alive, or something like that. Or the kills just could happen in the same order, meaning that people would know they're safe, at least temporarily. But maybe not. As for Jennifer, with Roman, Tyson, and Angelina all just dying normally, she would have a bit more of a prominent role. For example, at one point, Ghostface might be stalking Dewey and Gale, who are together and hiding, and Jennifer would use the voice changer that she would have found with the other two to lure Ghostface away, pretending to be Sydney arriving at the house, as in this version she would have received a call before everything in the mansion went down, telling her what she was told in the actual movie, though Ghostface would have been using the voice changer to pretend to be Gale and Dewey, and would have accidentally left the voice changer by a landline in the mansion, rather than with a costume in a closet. But yes, with Jennifer luring Ghostface away, she would try to escape into the secret passages, but would end up at a dead end like she does in Scream 3, though it wouldn't be at the one-way mirror, as that had already been used for Angelina. Again, the rest of the movie would continue as normal, but Gale and Dewey wouldn't be tied up, as they'd be currently hiding somewhere. and Ghostface would instead use recordings of Maureen from her time as an actress to lure Sidney into the secret room, where the voices would change to those of Randy, Tatum, Casey, Hallie, and other Ghostface victims. Ghostface would then step out and would reveal himself to be Martha. I know probably not what you are expecting, but I think should have something against both the Stab franchise and Sidney and Maureen. For Sidney and Maureen, it's because they are the cause of Randy's death, and if it hadn't been for them, then Martha's brother would still be alive. And as for the Stab franchise, well, she hates how it is using real murders for entertainment, and this would extend to Gale, who wrote the book about them, and Dewey, who was helping with the movie, as well as both of them leaving Randy alone to die. Like her brother, she would know a lot about movies, but she would be interested in behind-the-scenes parts, so would have used her knowledge of stagecraft to set up some of the murders and parts of the plot. Everything with Maureen's past would be a red herring in a way, and would be another way to disgrace and discredit the Prescotts by revealing Maureen's forgotten history and her secrets that go along with it. Gale and Dewey would call Kincaid, who would head to the house immediately, but by the time they got there, it would be too late, and by that I mean that Sidney and Martha would have had their fight/showdown, with Sidney apologising to her for Randy's death, and this time not killing her, unlike how she kills all the other Ghostfaces, when she has the chance, just shooting her in the leg and the shoulder or something, to stop Martha, from killing Sidney. Kincaid would arrive before anyone else, and Sidney would open the door to the secret room for him, unaware of Martha dragging herself to her feet and raising a knife above her head, which Kincaid would save Sidney from by shooting Martha's hand with precision accuracy. A little after this, Kincaid would reveal to Sidney that he's her older brother, and was the result of the things that happened to Maureen in Hollywood. He would say that he never knew what to think of his mother and her family when he found out who they were, but meeting Sidney has stopped him from hating his mum for abandoning him at an orphanage. Kincaid was the second best written character in the actual Scream 3 behind Sidney, and I thought he had a lot of potential, and that he would be revealed as Sidney's brother after some of the things he said to her. Plus, he's the same age as Roman, so the idea wasn't too preposterous. Overall, the movie would end pretty much the same as it actually does, with Sidney, Kincaid, Gale, and Dewey at Sidney's house. Dewey proposing to Gale, and the daughter thing happening even though Martha had explained she orchestrated everything like that to scare Sidney and punish her. But what are your thoughts on my version, and do you think it's better than the Scream 3 that we got or not? Whatever the case, thank you for listening. Consider checking out my other Scream videos, or even my second channel. Have a good day, and ta-ta.